Talk Radio.
Now we're talking.
TNT.
It is Terry Wolf Tuesday, our man in Manitoba. Terry Wolf, author of a number of books. I particularly like his Fire in the Rabbit Hole. He's been seen by millions on TikTok before he was deplatformed. Wolfpox.com, went to Christian.substack.com. What's going on, Terry? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Good to be here again. Thank you for having me back. Well, up here in Canada, we have some interesting trends that we already noticed last year, but they're kind of getting worse. People are fleeing the country. I mean, that's never a good sign. I know in the United States, the border is pretty much open and there's just, millions of immigrants flooding in and stuff. So, that's one kind of immigration. Here, it's not as easy, but people are seeking to leave and they're looking for where else to go. I hear callers on your show and people talking all the time about where can we go? How can we escape this? Because they have no confidence in Canada's future here.
Yeah, I saw this article from True North just a couple of days ago. Canadians fleeing country in record numbers. And it's kind of weird because prior to that, I saw mainstream Canadian news talking about how the population is increasing. And I'm just thinking, well, that doesn't square. If I myself have seen a flood of Canadians here in Mexico with my own eyes, and we're hearing reports about people leaving, how are the numbers going up in Canada? And I think they're tricking us. It's the migrants that they're bringing into Canada that are pushing the numbers up, but the native Canadians are leaving the country. They're, if Kurt Russell escaped from New York, escaped from LA. Now we've got escape from Ottawa, escape from Toronto. And many people I see online that I follow on Twitter are Canadians that live down in Mexico. There was recently a great video of this Canadian guy talking about why he's going to leave Canada. Well, the cost of living, the tyranny, and so forth. And just your further thought on this.
Well, that's exactly what's happening, and I can see it in my own town. There are so many immigrants coming in, but all the people that I grew up with or that I work with and stuff, they're talking about how they can leave. So, and then the people who are coming in, it's not like they're happy being here. They're just here, and then they find out once they get here that it's not as good as they were told. They were basically, Canada is lying to immigrants and telling them that it's a paradise here and that there'll be plenty of jobs and there'll be all this, affordable housing and all these things, but it's not true. The housing market's terrible. There's not nearly enough houses to support all the people that are coming in. So the housing prices are skyrocketing. Interest rates are super high. So the payments on houses is crazy. The rents are insane. And it's just a housing crisis here. Trudeau is scrambling to try to do something about it, although there's no easy solution. You have to build millions of homes. And so, they're lying to immigrants to get them to come here. And then the people who've lived here their whole lives are saying, this isn't going to be sustainable. I would also point out healthcare is a big part of that. Canada is very famous around the world for its healthcare being so free and, socialized. But that's in disarray too. People wait years for seeing a doctor if it's not a critical thing. And you can't just go to a private clinic. It's not like we have options, at least not for the most part. And so here's a story from the Globe and Mail. Canadian healthcare workers turn to AI for help amid a staffing crisis. So here we have hospitals. There's not a lot of them, but they're starting it. There's a service called ChartWatch, which is an AI-powered early warning system that hospitals are now starting to use to try to tell their nurses how to, when to check people's vitals and do blood work and these types of things. And because they don't have enough people to actually have a human pay attention to what you need. So they're trying to speed up the process by using AI, which of course requires a bunch of computing power and redesign of their systems. And there's privacy concerns, all these things that you would expect from AI getting involved in people's personal healthcare, but it's already happening. And I think that's another sign that Canada's healthcare system is overloaded. Socialized medicine doesn't work. There's not enough incentive because the pay isn't that great, and it's just it's pretty dark. And of course, we know Canada with their MAID system, their assisted dying program, they're measuring people being killed in terms of positive results. They're proud of the growth year over year of people having medical assisted dying. So it's a very dark country to live in right now.
There are a number of things there. I've even seen videos not long ago of immigrants in Canada saying they want to go back to their countries where they came from because it makes no financial sense, and then the culture is changing. So there's that. And by the way, speaking of AI, what you just mentioned, them using AI now in the hospitals in Canada. I mean, it's not a bad thing, but I think the issue is we're sold that AI is the answer to all of our problems. And no, like if you're going to use AI, you have to understand its limitations. I went to the beach recently, and I don't have any of these smart gadgets, but someone at the beach where we were staying, they had the Alexa, right? And then we'd plug in the Alexa to listen to music principally, and then unplug it when we're not using it. And half the time, it didn't understand me for the musicians. I couldn't get the bands to play that I wanted. Like it didn't understand the AI Alexa. So these systems are so imperfect. They still make so many mistakes. And also MAID. I don't know if you saw, there was an Al Jazeera 25-minute documentary produced recently on the Canadian MAID program. And my jaw was dropping. There was a lady from Myanmar or somewhere who was living alone in Canada after so many years. She had cancer, and she killed herself with MAID. And they later found in her emails that she kept secret that she said, look, the physical pain of my cancer is not so bad. It's really the mental anguish of I have nobody. And so I signed up for the government to kill me.
Right.
And that would have actually disqualified her for MAID. But it's just, this is a total eugenics, anti-human, democidal program. If you ask me, I don't think it should even exist.
This month, they're going to have to look at that again, I believe, and look at expanding it. They're trying to expand who all qualifies. And of course, the government is eager to try to get pretty much anyone to qualify if you spin it the right way. It's not an objective measurement that it has to be in place. It's all subjective. It's feelings. It's, your loved ones can even basically recommend it for you and say, there's like a whole system of trying to pressure people into doing this instead of demanding higher standards, demanding that the government fix the healthcare system. Since it runs the healthcare system, we have to go to the government. Notoriously crappy. You can't just vote with your feet, so to speak, and go to a different clinic or something. You have to try to bother the government and get them to improve things. So instead of that, just bully people into going into assisted suicide. That's a much easier solution for them. So yeah, I think of it as a eugenics program too. We'll see if they expand it even further, but there's horror stories all over the place. I didn't know about that documentary though. I might have to watch that.
Yeah, I'll share the link with you, or if I can find it, I'll throw it in the chat. Right now, it's time for our headlines. We'll be right back.
Attention! Special bulletin. TNT Radio News.
For TNT Radio News, this is James O'Neill. Claudine Gay, president of Harvard University, has resigned amidst a controversy involving plagiarism allegations and her testimony before Congress. The Times has reported that Britain's arsenal has been significantly depleted due to continuous arms supplies to Ukraine since February 2022. In New York City, Councilman Shekhar Krishnan is spearheading an initiative to bar former President Donald Trump from appearing on the state's primary and general election ballots for 2024.
Are you enjoying listening to TNT Radio? Do you think we're doing a good job? Then please let us know. Why not leave us a like or a positive review or comment on Facebook, Gab, or Getter? Help us get the word out as we cover the biggest topics of our time on today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
We're back with Terry, and someone just sent me an email, hilarious, from regarding how AI makes mistakes, from Bruce Bruce Schneier, who's I'm subscribed to his email list, but I haven't had time to check it in a long time. And it talks about it's a woman who, an influencer who accidentally ended up with a $60,000 of shrimp and squid at a lunch, and it was her fault because she took a photo of the menu with the QR code, and then she posted it, and I guess I don't know what happened. People scanned it, and then they ended up ordering to her meal so much more food. There's another perfect example of just the dystopian nature of all of this technology. And let me just ask you one more thing, because it's kind of related to the people fleeing Canada. There was a story that you had also mentioned about the border crisis that we all know that's going on in the U.S. And how the Border Patrol reports record encounters at the southern border. And it's just crazy, the influx of people. It's a deliberate globalist strategy. They're just masses of people are flooding into the U.S. now. There was a recent meeting between Mexico and U.S. with Mayorkas and Blinken. And Mayorkas, the head of the DHS, the American Stasi, tweets out that regional problems require regional solutions, like perhaps a North American Union. So, any thoughts you have on the border crisis?
Yeah, I see the immigration thing. This goes back to 2015 and, of course, Brexit and Donald Trump's election and all these things. But I see that entire thing as being about trying to it's not about a demographic war of replacing white people or something as simple as that. It's more like they hate when people are educated about their rights. They hate when people have high standards for their government and they're informed and they can resist, tyranny, and they're aware of things. And so if you can get people who don't even speak the language to flood in and they don't have jobs and they're just depending on welfare or some sort of state, apparatus, you're just shifting the balance of the discussion in the country just based on that. So, in December, the Border Patrol said that they encountered 300,000 migrants. That's like 1 month, and 52,000 people. There's unofficial numbers that are even higher. So in September, it was apparently 260,000. Like, we're talking about millions of people a year just walking across, and then, me and you and the people who are listening to this, we have standards. We want to demand things from our governments and improve things. Just like I want Canada to get its healthcare system together, and we all have things we want. But these people are just coming in and demanding jobs and welfare, if not, and a lot of them are hardworking, but still, this is a strategy, I believe, especially in the long term, to just shift the conversation. And this is, in a way, all going back to the 1% versus the 99%, Wall Street protests, just this rising literacy and this rising awareness of tyranny. That's how I see it. So it is the globalist plan to mix everything around, of course, they don't really want us to go over there. They just want people from Mexico, people from other parts of the country where I live. There's so many people from Africa, from India, from Pakistan. These countries, they come here with chain migration, and they're not concerned about the same things me or you are concerned about, and so they're not putting the same kind of pressure on these corrupt politicians.
And I just read something yesterday. It was a tweet. I didn't have time. I tried to find the source, but someone said that some of these illegal migrants, they'd get, I don't know who's giving them money, the U.S. government, they will get like $2,000 or something. And then they'll circle back. Then they'll exit the U.S., come back again, get another $2,000, and then another, and get like $8,000, $10,000 scamming the system. And now in California, I've mentioned before, I know Americans that work full-time jobs just to have insurance, which for me is insane. That type of system should not even exist. That insurance costs that much that you got to work full time just to have insurance, health insurance, and now illegal migrants are going to get health insurance. Who gives me health insurance here in Mexico? I don't even get from the Mexican government. Well, I guess I've never applied. I guess I do get EAMS, but I just use private healthcare for now because it's kind of affordable. But there's this crazy story that you found as well. CTV News Canada. I'm just more every day. I'm just facepalm. Roughly 10% of global emissions come from tourism. A new report says between 8 and 10% of global emissions come from the tourism industry, and that change is needed to bring them down in time for 2030 climate targets. Your thoughts on this madness?
Yeah, I'm going to read a little bit from here. In 2023, the world witnessed an extraordinary succession of broken climate records, causing widespread and profound impacts on ecosystems and society. It felt like a very normal year to me, but anyway, this moment compels a proportionate response from the tourism community. So that's another one of these regional problems that you need to have, regional unions and the United Nations and these transnational things. Every problem now is a crisis that transcends borders. It affects all of us from the highest to the lowest, and therefore we need to have a global government. So here, not only is it about carbon reduction, which is about destroying critical infrastructure and limiting our human liberty, but it's also, a push for this regional solution. So, yeah, this is a report people should be alarmed at. They're claiming 10% of global emissions come from tourism. That's so just impossible when you look at all human activity across the whole globe is like 1% of carbon emissions compared to what the oceans do and what, just naturally happens in volcanoes and things like that. So this 10% is a scare number. It's not real. And, you'd have to use your critical thinking when you see reports like this, but it's there to shock, it's there to scare people, and then those people go along with what politicians say, and that way they can just sort of bulldoze the conversation with these terrifying numbers that don't mean anything.
And then there's a segment here that says the TPCC, what is that? Again, so many of these acronyms. Tourism Panel on Climate Change. They've actually got a tourism panel on climate change. Highlights the importance of integrating climate change and tourism policies. It's so funny how they put these, cute unicorns and rainbows phrases. Climate change and tourism policies it should really be renamed to we're going to take away all of your rights to freedom of movement, and that's still a question that we're going to have to answer. Someone a few months ago, I mentioned this, they brought up a good question. This contradicts the UN's own charter and the EU's own charter and human rights, where we're all supposed to have freedom of movement. But now the UN's own tourism, climate change board is trying to restrict our freedom of movement. But here it says, with a focus on mitigating the emissions impact of travel and creating incentives for low carbon tourism. And just your thought, Terry, because I listened to Xi Jinping's New Year's address yesterday. 11 minutes long. There's English subtitles. People can find it. And he actually says that the Chinese are learning to live a low carbon lifestyle. And so, again, there's that question for the multipolaristas, how, China and Russia at the end of the day are pushing this Malthusian democidal agenda. It was just kind of, weird to hear Xi Jinping, a low carbon lifestyle. Like, let's go back to the Middle Ages, that's a low carbon lifestyle. Yeah. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that stood out to me that I thought were strange. One was that he acknowledged that their economy was in trouble. He called them headwinds and said that there was people who couldn't find jobs and that, were struggling to get by, which, I figured he would just say that everything is perfect and that China's never been stronger, and sort of that typical communist, ultra projection of strength. And at the same time, yeah, he talks about this low carbon lifestyle, which, I think in the video they show somebody riding bikes in a park or something like that. And, everyone knows that there's huge pollution problems in China, regardless of the climate debate. There's just inhuman levels of pollution. And, you know, yeah, he's not mentioning uh, any of the real deep problems that would actually cause ecological harm but yeah, the posturing and pandering to the climate thing, they're pushing very hard for battery powered vehicles and EVs in China right now. I've seen videos of old EVs being hauled off in semi trucks and just dumped into landfills because the new generation came by and they're replacing them. The manufacturers buy their own stock and register them as being sold so that they can hit the quotas that the government is requiring of them. And so it's like this big scam where nobody's actually buying them, and then they can report these fake numbers. And that just creates this environmental disaster where these batteries are exploding and they're not being maintained or disposed of properly. So yeah, the green rhetoric is purely a lie, but it's there to prop up that the question of, why are they suddenly going along with this woke climate agenda? Is there some sort of benefit, or do they have the same thing in mind? Like you said, it's a convenient excuse to suppress people, and why wouldn't China go along with the same talking points if they have the same goal of, keeping people down and restricting their freedom, restricting their economic growth, and saying that it's good for the environment?
Yeah, I think Beijing is in with the technocrats. Anthony Sutton and many others have attested to that. And real quick, you also talked about, you had thoughts on Taiwan and the semiconductors there and the unification with China.
Yeah, Xi said in December that reunification with Taiwan was inevitable. That was his choice of words. And I just wanted to point out that this month, I believe, I read that Taiwan is having a major election. And so there are pro and anti-Beijing factions competing there. And basically all of the political parties in Taiwan are distancing themselves now from China and saying that they're not pro-Beijing because the people in Taiwan are so anti-China by now. And one of the things is Taiwan has TSMC, which is one of the biggest chip manufacturers in the entire world, if not the biggest. And they specialize in ways that others don't, especially for AI technology, AI designed conductor chips and microchips. So that's why Taiwan is such a hot topic right now. And this month, I look forward to seeing what happens there, because you got the election, you've got this military, frigate brigade over there that's, they're surrounding the whole area with ships. And China's putting a lot of pressure on Taiwan. But I think it all comes down to this TSMC chip manufacturer.
It's going to be, again, a lot of interesting stuff going on in the Indo-Pacific with China and in Asia as well. It's time for our break. Check out Terry's website, Wolf, as in the animal, wolfpox.com. Check out his Substack, his different socials, his books, and so forth. We'll be right back.
Our beautiful world.
Help kids like me. Thank you.
Critically analyzing global affairs. This is the Hervoy Moritz Show on today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Our final segment with Terry Wolf, wolfpox.com. By the way, Terry, I watched yesterday your interview with Daniel Natal. I've been on his show. He's been on my TNT show and podcast. How was that?
Daniel Natal, had not heard of him. He reached out to me, I think, because of you, and I was unsure of what to expect. Once I went there, he was very informed. I learned some things from him that I didn't know, which doesn't often happen. And we got into the whole fire in the rabbit hole thing, these psyops, and how we got to this point where, yeah. So we got into a very deep conversation. I think the Daniel Natal show, it's worth checking out if people want to see my interview on there. I hope to be able to go back on, because we still had, afterwards, we were having a conversation, and there's still a lot left to talk about that we wanted to get into.
Yeah, and he was with the New American, and now he's not, and he's restarting his channel, and he's like, for me, he's a brain. He's very well read and very sharp, and my podcast with him was, because like you said, he's not such a big name, but it was popular because he's so smart, and you also, some of the things you were looking at Netanyahu, this is shocking I guess not so shocking to see that only, just 15% of Israelis would keep Netanyahu as prime minister after the war. So, your further thoughts on Israel and Netanyahu.
Yeah, I've been paying attention to this for a while, and as far as I know, Netanyahu was terribly unpopular before the Gaza attacks. There was all sorts of protests and almost like a feeling of a civil war, that people were so unhappy with the way he was treating the legal system there. He was trying to take away the power of the Supreme Court to challenge him and these types of things. And now the attacks happened, and it was supposed to be a big 9/11 event to change perception and rally people, like with George Bush, and suddenly everybody was patriotic, and they could suddenly pass the Patriot Act, and almost nobody said anything because the tension in the air. But it doesn't seem to actually be working. Netanyahu is still very unpopular. Obviously, one of my first questions is, why not blame him for not preventing it in the first place? That's a huge failure of the security state, which they have all the resources and surveillance necessary to prevent it. So yeah, it just stood out to me now that even this is from yesterday, 15% of people say they would keep him, which means a lot more want him gone.
Yeah, my tour guide in Israel was a hardcore, Israel supporter. But, this is the guy that pushed COVID-1984 hard on the Israelis. And, your thoughts regarding what's happening with Trump. There's the main ballot. And then I just shared this from you. I got this from Dustin Nemos's Telegram. Dustin was recently on on the show here on TNT, and it's from The Economist. And again, a trick for people listening to get behind the paywalls: archive.today. Toss in links from The Economist, Wall Street Journal, New York Times. It will give you the full unpaywalled version. Hey, it's open source, so I don't think I can get into trouble there. But it says from The Economist, this is December 20th. Many Trump supporters believe God has chosen him to rule. Say the word apostle, and people think of stern, halo-crowned men with names like Peter or John, not a bloke called Greg from Mississippi. Unlike the first apostles who were partial to robes, if stained glass windows are anything to go by, Greg prefers jeans and cowboy boots. And it goes on, I guess, to talk about how people
worship Trump,
worshiping Trump. And this goes to Donnie Darkin's theory. And I saw something recently as well, an insane clip. It's somewhere on my Twitter, which I liked, comparing again, so many comparisons between Trump. The Trump supporters are making all these comparisons to Trump and Jesus. Here it is. This is crazy. So I didn't even know this. You've got in the New Testament, the book of John, it says, then the soldiers, when they had crucified Jesus, took his garments and made 4 parts, to every soldier a part. So they took Jesus's garments and shared them with each other. And Trump, in this, we talked about this before, his NFT digital cards. So yeah. Trump is selling a suit that he wore that will be cut into pieces.
Yeah, snipped it.
That's
into
totally like mimicking what happened to Jesus. So this is really starting to freak me out. But your thoughts on economists talking about this about Trump and the main ballot stuff, and then all of this, these things.
Well, we saw Colorado tried to ban him from the ballot, and now Maine is doing it. We were talking about maybe this will have a ripple effect, and you'll see a domino effect where a lot of states will try to ban him from the primary ballot so that he can't even be the GOP candidate. A lot of them have already said that's not going to happen, but here we see another one. So Maine and Colorado looked like they're both going to go in this direction. But of course, they're going to try to appeal it. It's going to hype up his persecution complex. This is, the Jesus thing too, that, he's hated by the deep state. They wanted to stop him from winning. And so, you know, I could go on and on about Trump's Space Force, the obviously Operation Warp Speed, and him locking down the economy and hyperinflating the economy with his money printing during that time and all this stuff. But it is very real. People basically do worship him. I think it's worth studying, worth looking into. I see videos of people on the street being interviewed where they're talking about him as the chosen one, as the deliverer, the Messiah that is going to save Israel. It's going to save America. He's going to save America. He's going to kill the globalists. He had that very weird speech where he was talking about being the retribution of Americans who were tired of the deep state, and really sort of a fire and brimstone warning to the globalist elite. So, people are ready for the Jeffrey Epstein list to be released, and they think Trump is going to, kill them all, I guess, or send them to Gitmo or whatever it is they think he's going to do. And I think it's a phenomenon definitely worth studying. It's real. I don't know if it's being exaggerated in this article or not. I'd have to read it. But I would say just based off of my estimate of the culture, I'd say probably almost 20% of the people who deeply support Trump have some almost religious, conviction. I think a lot of other people just like somebody like Tucker Carlson or somebody would just say, he's a good candidate because he's popular and he will beat the left, and that's just sort of a pragmatic look at him. But I would also remind you of like Alex Jones writing a book recently called The Great Awakening, where he talks about how God has this glorious future in mind for us that is going to happen after the globalists are defeated. And, we saw the the NWO video game he put out too, where Trump comes in literally flying out of the sky and blasting demons with his eyes. And like there's this imagery is out there. And so it's being pushed in the counterculture. People don't think of him as a mainstream politician or a mainstream controlled candidate. So yeah, it's bordering on this. And I think Darnie Darkin does a great job of sort of exposing how sick this can be.
Yeah, I played the Alex Jones video game just for fun. Hey, it was like 5 levels. I think I finished it in a half hour or something. But and the article also says 3 in 10 Americans believe Mr. Trump was anointed by God to become president. But again, there's so much twisting of scripture here. The Bible implies throughout the Bible that our God oversees rulers being put into place, good and bad. So you can't, you're supposed to respect the government in general as a Christian, whether it's tyrannical or not. Of course, you want to work against evil and work as a peacemaker and work towards good. But we got 3 minutes left, and there was still some AI news. And Maria Z shared on her Telegram an interesting story about how the EU is pushing AI governance hard, and she says it's the guise is of protecting people from AI, but all this legislation, but the goal is eventually completely hand over governance in all facets of society to AI per the UN 100, whatever this thing is called. And I've been talking about for years now, algocracy. That's algocracy. That's what they want, ruled by algorithm. But 2.5 minutes left. Other thoughts on? We don't have enough time to cover all the stories, but you had some more on AI.
Yeah, I saw this on Blaze Media. Police in Britain are investigating a case of virtual rape in the metaverse. So no physical harm, but some underage person was using VR metaverse stuff, and a bunch of guys in the game went and I guess surrounded her and sort of simulated attacking her or something, and now they're investigating it. So I would say this is. The metaverse has been so disappointing, but here, even the few people who are doing it are experiencing this, and now police have to try to figure out whether that's a real crime or just a sort of a mishap in a video game. Very strange times. I
don't even know what to think about this. Obviously, it's a serious subject, but you just unplug. You're physically in your home, and I don't know, because again we're on this slippery slope, because they're criminalizing thought. Something you post on Twitter. So if I just post something the government doesn't like, the cops come and take me away. So I think we have to be careful with this. So
people should be responsible for themselves participating in a video game. There's been millions of video games where you kill each other in the video game, but now because it's a VR headset and it's a social environment and somebody does something rude to you, like just take responsibility, unplug, limit children's access to it if you want to. But yeah, this turning it into a crime and letting it happen like this is the real life. It's the metaverse. That's the bizarre thing to me, is to indulge the idea of the metaverse to that extent.
And it's the parents' responsibility. It's not the government. So I don't think it's I treat it like a video game. So I don't think it should be a crime. It's the parents' responsibility to watch that stuff. Always great chatting, Terry. I look forward to our chat next week. Tell us again where we can find you, your latest projects and all that.
Go to wolfpox.com. That's a nice short URL, or you can go to winterchristian.substack.com. That's where I'm doing articles nowadays.
All right. Until next time, Steve Malzberg is up next. Keep on rocking in the not-so-free world. Be seeing you.